I'm Tony, and I have progressive supranuclear palsy. Follow me on my journey. Oh yeah, everybody. This is the second part of the talk about dementia. I want to call it Dementia 102, keeping with the Dementia 101 theme. This one is about the aspect of executive function dementia called organization and how it affects me. To recap some of the things that organizational functions of executive function dementia cover are things like attention, planning, sequencing, problem solving, working memory, which we'll spend a good deal of this video on, cognitive flexibility, abstract thinking, rule acquisition, and selecting relevant sensory information. Now, in talking about the organizational part of this executive function dementia, I am currently aware that many of those aspects that I just talked about, just said, are in the in my issues, and not all that I am aware of. That doesn't mean I don't experience it, but I am not aware of it. But I know that I experience problems with attention and planning, and it's odd that I'm doing videos, right? Because that takes a lot of planning. Sequencing, again, with the videos. I do have problems with that, and it's very big problems. But I also have experience problem solving and with my working memory, as I've said before. So let's get right down to it. To me, attention is a big problem because in my mind, I've got, I think, is a multitude of thoughts. However, those thoughts don't always convey themselves. I look at it like this is my thought side, and this is my communication side where I get my thoughts out. And I might have 4 thoughts, and they come barreling in, and I don't know what those 4 thoughts are. They may be related to the topic. They may, if the topic was about plane travel, or one of those topics may be about plane travel, but the other 3 could be about what is that stain in the grass? What is that bug flying around? Am I feeling hungry? So those are the kind of things that may come out. And only one of those is going to get through this. So we may be talking about plane travel, and I say, what is this stain on the grass? What does that have to do with plane travel? Well, my attention didn't let me focus on that conversation to get that part out. It sent through the plane travel one. Or the grass one. See, I even just messed that up. But many people have asked me, they wondered how I can continue to do all this when I have PSP and their loved one can't. I am right now fairly fortunate. I think I'm still fairly early on, even though it's been 5 years since my first backwards falls. If the progression continues, I will probably be one of those 10-year plus survivors. If it continues, of course, we have no way to tell. But they also want to know when I'm writing how I can communicate so well, because that requires a lot of the organization. And I put it down to one word that my mentor, Tim Brown, told me one time. He said, editing, or edit. I get all of these thoughts. My brain with the attention seems like a bee going from flower to flower. You know, they don't last long on it. And they're just gathering the nectar, and of course the pollen is sticking to them. But they gather the nectar and they're off to the next flower, right? For myself, I may think that I'm multitasking, or thinking multiple things at the same time, but only one is actually happening at a time, though others compete to try to get out. With the editing, I have learned, thanks to Tim, is to jot down whatever got out. It may or may not be useful. I'll discard it if it's not, and keep it if it is. Now, on posts, I generally jot them down within my posts, and then I expand on what I jotted down, and I go back and I try to put them in order. This is why that even though I saw the post, it may take me a while to respond. I once wrote an article for the Facebook group, and it took me over 3.5 hours, but and I documented everything about that time that it took. And I was a 40 words a minute typist. I know it's not high, but it was adequate for my computer programming and stuff. And now, with the slowdowns and stuff, and the fact that I lose attention, such as in this conversation, that my typing is way down. That short article may have taken somebody 1 or 2 minutes to read, and it took me 3.5 hours to put together. I wrote during that time, various things popped into my mind and distracted me from the attention that I needed to give it. Things like the song for Gilligan's Island. Now it's stuck in your head. And I was trying to be quiet as my wife was sleeping and I was awake, so I was doing it at night. And I spent some time looking up at the ceiling fan, thinking, did I want a snack or not, and things like this. They just all impacted on that, not counting the fact that I had to edit it all and get those thoughts out. And even then, after I read it a year later, I wasn't happy with it now. I think I could have done better. I still get praise from people, and I'm like, okay, thank you, but yeah, I think I could do better with more time. So maybe 5.5 hours or 6 hours for that same thing. But anyway, I talked about that my attention is like that bee searching for the pollen. It doesn't finish its task. There's always some little residual nectar in there, for the next bee, and so on and so forth. And that's the way that my attention runs. And you may see that in your patient, or you may see that in yourself. That somebody may talk about one thing and you offer something else. It's not even related. It's not that they don't understand. It's that, because I understand we were talking about plane travel, and I have a thought about plane travel. It just wasn't the part that got out. And as you'll find later when I'm talking about working memory, I need prompts. I need an external or an internal prompt. Otherwise, I tend to be quiet and not say a lot, because I got so much flitting around in my head. So if I said something about the grass, the stain in the grass, instead of the plane travel, then I really need to be brought back to that conversation. This is one reason that I could no longer function as a leader, as an executive leader or whatever at Walt Disney World. I could no longer be a manager or anything, because my mind didn't work right anymore. The next thing I know I have problems with is the planning and sequencing, and I alluded to that with the attention, in that I can put things down on paper, but to my thinking, the planning and the sequencing, which are listed separately as executive function dementia problems, they're intertwined with the attention and other things, problem solving and all that. Everything is all intertwined. My thinking is very slowed down, like my speech. As a matter of fact, my speech is part of my thinking. I tend, if you read my posts, because I've edited them, they are more to what I wanted to say. But with this, I can't organize a thought to get it out, and then I have to stop the thinking part and get to the stop the thinking about the topic and get to the thinking about how I get it out of my mouth and move my mouth to form the words. That is the difficult part, is I can now only do one thing at a time. My brain has to switch from the thought to getting it out. This is where working memory comes in. During the conversation, I may forget where I was even in the same sentence that I was saying. But to me, it's planning and sequencing. I may say stuff out of order. Well, you need to cook it at 365. let's say I was making a cookie, I'd say you need to cook it at 365. But don't forget, you got to add the flour. And don't forget, you got to stir it. Oh, and butter and milk and whatever. You see, it's all out of sequence. I'm already cooking it, and I haven't even made it. I'm already doing one thing, and I haven't finished the other. And that's the way that it works. Because I was mentioning that in a while back, that my brain is like a recipe, is that I may start in the beginning, middle, or end. I don't know where it's going to start, and then I have to add in the other pieces. I can't put them in that sequences. That's for that part. The next thing is problems. Excuse me. I had some cranberry juice. The problem solving. I used to, as I mentioned before, used to have a quick and sharp mind, and was very progressive in the thinking for statistics. I was a computer programmer, a database developer, and lastly, I was a statistical analyst for Walt Disney World. And I was innovative in the statistics, in how we choose to view the guest experience and things like that. But now I have not only the slowdown, but as I've mentioned before, I have physically gate freezing, so my feet quit working, or I don't want to do it because I'll do it on camera again, but when I grip something, I have grip freeze, as it were. But I think the same kind of thing happens in my mind, is that I have a mental gate freeze. In other words, my mind will stop working. Even just then, during that brief second when I was trying to come up with the right word for stop, my mind paused and it went almost totally blank. And not thinking about what's outside, what's inside, what's happening around me, or even the words I was trying to use. It took my mind to shut everything else off to get to what I wanted to say and get it out. So some of the pauses are going to be that mental gate freezing, and some are longer than others. I know that I'm still breathing and everything else when my mind stops like that. So the autonomic functions are continuing. But the voluntary, such as speaking or thinking about something, that isn't. And finally, I want to start that big thing on working memory. I've talked about working memory. A lot of people know short-term, long-term memory, but there is other researchers that have described working memory, and they distinguish it from short-term and long-term, though they may overlap, especially short-term. The working memory may overlap with short-term. Working memory, I'm going to read this off of my thing that I've written. It can be defined as the ability of our brain to keep a limited amount of information available long enough to use it. Limited amount of information available long enough to use it. Like in a conversation. What was the question you asked me? By the time I'm 2 or 3 sentences in, I may not remember that question and be totally back to, there's a stain in the grass. You see, to that. But working memory also helps process thoughts and plans, which, as we've discussed, I'm unable to do the planning, and I have slow thinking. It also carries out ideas. The working memory does. So if you and I are talking and you say, hey, we should, I don't know, I'm making stuff up. We should adjust the TV antenna to get better reception. We all remember how that used to be. It was always better when somebody hung onto the antenna. But anyway, the adjustment of the antenna would come into my brain, and I would try to go do it, but forget what I was supposed to be doing. I would grab the antenna, and you'd say, that's good, but I hadn't done anything, and I can't remember to adjust it, so I let go, and you say, oh, it's back, and I'd like, wait, right? So I can't do that anymore. I can't remember to make that adjustment. I can't remember to take my shower, even though it's written on the calendar. I get back to the bedroom where I'm supposed to grab, clothes to go take in with the shower, and I've totally forgotten that. I don't know why I'm standing at my dresser, so I go and do something else. And that is the carrying out ideas part. You can think of working memory as your short-term memory, combining strategies and knowledge from your long-term memory bank. And it's used to make the decisions, add to the conversation, or to do calculation, things like that. But many of the researchers, matter of fact, most the researchers that I've read have said working memory is connected to executive function. So it's a type of memory that you use to remember things like what the start of the conversation was about. Most PSP patients, now of course I talked about that there could be comorbidities, medication, or illness like a urinary tract infection that could be in there, trying to remember what the conversation was about. We have the short-term and long-term memory, and it can be affected by those. But the short-term and long-term memories for everybody, you choose what is kept and what is discarded. My brain does that automatically. So, for instance, going to take a shower, I may forget that I'm supposed to go take a shower. My wife, if she stops by 10 minutes later and says, hey, you were supposed to be getting a shower, or something similar, or hey, it's time for you to be getting in that shower, need me to run the water or something, and that is a prompt that I use to bring that back. It has already entered short-term memory and maybe long-term memory, but until I'm prompted, I won't remember it. And that happens. And the prompt can come at the most unusual times. I will say to my wife, like today, she's out of the house and this morning, and I will say, if this was my shower day, I would say to myself, I need to take a shower. You totally forget about it. Later tonight, as it's getting to be bedtime, something may prompt me. There may be a show on and somebody takes a shower. It's like, hey, I was supposed to get a shower. And I'll tell that to my wife, and she say, you didn't get a shower. And it's like, no, I don't know. But the working memory also impacts some of my medication. I have a pill container with a timer And we may show that in a much further video about some of the assistive devices that we have. But I have this pill container that reminds me at 8 o'clock in the morning, at 8 o'clock at night to take pills, and the pills rotate to be taken. But my diabetes thing, I need a shot. I have to give myself a shot. Though it's nearing the point where my wife's going to have to give it to me. So I sometimes don't remember, did I give myself a shot or not? Every morning I check my blood sugar, and right there is when I normally do my shot, but I don't always remember. We haven't put too much brain power into what we can do to ensure I get the shot. And that's the same with a lot of these. But my working memory doesn't let me remember if I took the shot or not. I have no other way to know, when I am having problems with my working memory, there's a couple of things that we tend to do. And that is, my wife tries to keep track of that. She's my brain now. She tries to, my wife Barbara, she tries to keep track of the start of the conversation, what it was about, because I may need to be brought back to it. She tries to keep the conversation short. And quite often, she gives me time to communicate it. Sometimes she doesn't. Hence, when I talked about the outburst, or for me, not giving me time to communicate, because my brain will only function in that communication mode. That is infuriating to my brain, where it wouldn't normally have been before. But she is now, most of the time, wanting to keep us to the topic and get finished with that before we introduce something else. And she used to all the time, but she doesn't so much anymore. Only rarely does she say things like, don't you remember we talked about this or whatever? If I could remember, I would have said so. So don't ask me if I remember, because no, I don't. Or, to placate you, I may say, yeah, I remember. And then we chalk it up to apathy. But realistically, most likely not. Unless there is some sort of a prompt, an external or internal prompt. But if you ask me later, I'll probably remember. So, getting close to the end of this, when I have, because I have my working memory is shot, when I have a reaction, either positive or negative, the focus leaves my mind within moments. As I said, I threw that across the room. I don't remember doing it. I remember my wife bending over to pick it up right now, just sitting here talking to you, and it was just almost a week ago. And I remember throwing that little tiny talker 2 across the room. I don't remember that. I remember my wife picking it up and bringing it back. I didn't think, why is it across the room? It never entered my mind to think that. But I remember her bringing it back, and there was a very brief discussion about it, and only later could I get back to it and say that I was sorry. It was already gone out of my mind. The same thing will happen when you say, let me help you stand up to go to the bathroom. Don't you try to do it. Okay, I'll say. And moments later, I'm going to do it. This is where working memory and apathy overlap. Remember, I said there's a lot of overlap in some of these. And once the feeling to the reaction to my throwing that or whatever, once that is obtained, I still may not say something. I still may not apologize. And I have read, unfortunately, many of you caregivers out there saying, my mother or my husband or father or whatever, they never even apologized for their behavior. And to us, we don't remember the behavior. It's devastating, I know, but we just don't remember it. We need a prompt. Then, depending upon the severity and what's affected in the executive function realm, we may not even recognize that there was a problem. We may be in denial. This is this problem with the working memory is why did I say, one of the things that I say is live in our world, come to our world. We don't remember all this. So if you're getting angry because you're expecting an I love you or I'm sorry or something like this isn't there anymore. It's not that we don't feel all that. Some of us may just need a prompt, like myself. Others, it may not exist for them anymore to say that, those social niceties. The act of contrition and all that. So please be patient with your PSP patient. And if you are the PSP patient watching this, show your caregivers this so that they can understand you a bit more and how they can better interact with you by being in your world. Don't forget about theirs. You just may not be able to interact much with it, but let them know, even through this video, that you need that assistance from them. That's what the caregiver role is really all about, is getting you assistance, isn't it? Or giving assistance if you're the caregiver watching this. And that's something that we all need, is assistance, whether it be the patient or the caregiver. It's not a one-way street. I know my wife needs assistance quite often, and at the sometime in August, I think, we're going to be having a person give her respite a few times a week. And she'll be able to go and unwind and do various things. Even if it just means going shopping for her crafting stuff or whatever. And she won't have to worry about me because there'll be somebody here. So, assistance, everybody. Help each other out. Again, my wife Barbara and I like to close this video with our key lines that we use. But before I get to that, I just wanted to talk about the next topic. It's basically Dementia 103, and it's called Regulation, Not Rules. So in the meantime, be safe on your journey, and remember to keep making memories.